Good morning. It's good to be back in the house. I've heard some awesome testimonies. You know, it always makes a pastor's heart happy when you leave and God still shows up. I'm just kidding. I know he still shows up. But just to hear all that God did while I was out for a couple weeks in Thailand. It's not very far away. Just kidding. Long way away. You can ask our team about those 15-hour flights we jumped on. Those were super fun. But man, we got to see God do some awesome stuff. But it is good to be back with you guys. So awesome to be in the presence of God with y'all. Just love what God's doing in our community and what He's building here, what He's building in us, and what He's doing through us. We got to see God do some awesome stuff in Thailand, and we're actually going to have some of our team come up in just a minute and share some testimonies from that. And I really believe that I heard this one time, and I thought it was a great picture of that the farther the light shines, the brighter it shines at home. And guess what? We went about as far away as you can go. We went all the way around the globe and to Thailand. And I believe that there is just something for us to receive this morning. There's something for our house, our community, because we're the ones that did send this mission team across the world, and we got to see God show up. And I just believe there's something here for you today that I believe is going to be imparted as we're sharing testimonies. And I want you to embrace these testimonies of your own testimonies. Like, we're all a part of the body of Christ, and a testimony that somebody else shares is really our testimony. It's our testimony that we get to hold on to. So looking forward to that. I do want to give one quick update on something that's really near and dear to my heart. Probably one of the favorite things that we do at Oak City is our Kingdom Ministry Intensive. It's called KMI. We usually do it in the spring and in the fall. And we are going to take a break from KMI this fall, and we're going to start it back up in the spring. We're getting some fresh vision for it. We'll be giving updates for that as we go. Already really do feel just God breathing on that, and looking forward to what that's going to look like in the spring. If you got any questions for me or any of our team, don't hesitate to reach out about that, but wanted to give that update to you. I'm excited about just what God has done over the past 10 days. If you're new here, you probably just heard me, but we just sent a team to Thailand. We were there for, I believe, 12 days, and got to just see God do some awesome stuff. And I want to, before I bring the team up to share some testimonies, I want to share a few things from my heart, that just observations from being on this trip. One observation is that the gospel of Jesus Christ is pretty simple and it's powerful. That the gospel it's simple and it's so powerful. Thailand is a lot different than Birmingham, Alabama. There is a spiritual climate there that is so different than what is here in Birmingham, Alabama. If you don't believe in the supernatural, head on over to Thailand. They'll help you out with that. There is temples everywhere. These are not Christian temples or churches, but they are temples everywhere. And one of the things that was pretty unique is, and just to kind of give a picture of what the culture is like, I will say this: Thailand, the people there are so precious. They're so beautiful. They have, they actually remind me some of Southerners. They have a very polite culture. They're very nice. They're very kind. And we met some of the hungriest believers that I've been around. There are some people there that just love Jesus. Only, I think, less than 1% of the country is believers. So not a lot of believers. A lot of places we went. I remember Joel. He's the guy that our contact on the ground there, and he would ask people, "How many of you are first generation believers?" And pretty much just about everybody would raise their hand. But they have just to kind of give you a little picture. Not every house, but a lot of the houses. I keep looking down here because some of the team was there, but a lot of the houses there have a little house out in front of their house or in front of their business. It's like a little, I mean, it's not much bigger than this podium, but it's like it looks like a little temple to me. And it's these little houses that are in front of every house, and that house is actually for the ghost. You'll have that in Birmingham, Alabama, where you got like a house that you've built in front of your house for the ghost. So they have, the reason they have that is because they don't want the ghost to live inside the house. So it's a protection that they have, from my understanding, of we're going to build a house because we don't want him hanging out inside. And so we're going to put the little house, and Cole's got pictures of them. And the fascinating thing is, and this verse came a little more alive to me, that he's rescued us from darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of light, that he's rescued us from the dominion of darkness and he's transferred us into the kingdom of light. Like, isn't that awesome? And that when you're in Thailand, that just kind of brought a whole new light to that. Joel, the guy on the ground there, he said that at times, he'll get called into somebody's house because the house is haunted, because the house is, there's stuff happening in there that is not good. And they'll bring him in there, and he'll go in there with God. Thank you, Jesus. He'll go in there with the Holy Spirit, and he'll ask God, like, what's happening inside of the house? And he'll share with them, like, hey, this is what I'm discerning that's happening in your house. There's this spirit in here. There's this thing going on in here. And it actually brings credibility with the people, because they're like, oh, wow, this person actually hears from God, because they're able to identify what's going on. And I asked Joel, I said, well, what do you do at that point after you've identified everything going on? He says, I just tell them that if you turn to Jesus, then he'll protect you and deliver you from all of this stuff going on. And then I was like, well, Joel, what do? And he said, they repent. They turn to God. Because they're like, I want freedom. I don't want to live in a haunted house. And what does Jesus do? He transfers them from the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of light. And it's so simple. It's such just a simple turn to God. And what happens is he delivers us and he sets us free. And this is, like, to me, that's so powerful. And we just experienced, like, I felt like there was just such a grace and a protection from God over our team. That we were just covered by the presence of God. Like, yeah, were there times where we felt some funny stuff? Sure. But overall, like, you could feel that greater is he that is in me than he that's in the world. And you just felt the power and the presence of God while we were there. I remember, too, there was another moment where we were in a worship service, and I just love the guys on the ground there. Joel, he's an American, but he's fluent in Thai. And he gets up, and we had already, our worship team, by the way, it was so powerful to watch what we experience here go there, and just the presence of God would just show up so powerfully as we would worship God. And it was like one of the things the Thai people, they were like, can y'all please keep worshiping? Can y'all keep bringing that? Just because the presence of God was so showing up. And in one of the first meetings that we did, God just started showing up, and Joel gets up there, and he's just going off in Thai. I can't understand what he's saying, but he's up there, and the presence of God is just falling in the room. And then all of a sudden, like, the joy of the Lord just filled the room. And all these people in Thai are just laughing in joy. And there's just like, and you see them, like, they're in tears, and the peace of God and the joy of God is showing up. And I go over to one of the translators, and I'm like, what's he saying? And he's saying that when you give God your burden, he gives you joy. Yeah. Isn't it that simple? Like, it's just that simple. You give God, he's like, look, you give God your burden, you give him that, and he gives you refreshing, he gives you peace, he gives you joy. And we sat in that space, I don't know, it was about 15, 20, 30 minutes of just a bunch of Thai people dying out laughing in the presence of God. And it was just such a joyful, powerful moment. And so many people in that meeting end up getting healed, and God showed up. We'll share some of the testimonies. But I love just the simplicity of the gospel, the simplicity of, I turn to God, and what does he do? He sets me free. And it's true here, it's true in Thailand, it's true wherever you go, that this gospel of Jesus Christ is the power of God unto salvation. and it's true wherever we go. And it was so fun just to see the presence and the power of God go with us. I'm going to read one scripture, then I'm going to have the team come up. I'm not even going to read it because it's already 11:20. But there's this, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter 3, oh, I love this. It's such a good little verse here. There's a lot of great verses in there. But it's a fascinating deal because the people in Corinthians, somehow, to us, this can seem laughable, but they started to disregard Paul's leadership. They started to question his credentials, which is a bad idea. But they started to question who he was, and they even, because I think from my understanding what happened is this church got introduced to some other leaders, and they got introduced to people maybe that were better communicators, more wealthy, had better status, and so they started to disregard who Paul was. And Paul, in first really part of 2 Corinthians, he's addressing this dynamic. And in the context of him addressing this, and he's kind of going after him a little bit like, guys, this is pretty ridiculous. I don't need to write you a letter of recommendation to prove what my credentials are. He goes on to say pretty much that you guys are my letter, that what God has done in you, written his spirit on your hearts, is proof of what I'm preaching. It's proof of what God is doing in me, and it's proof of my leadership. And in that, chapter 3 here, he talks about the difference between the ministry of the letter of the old covenant and the ministry of the new covenant. And he's talking about how, and he's really, he's the purpose of this is he's demonstrating what he's done and how glorious the ministry of the Spirit is. And he talks about how, and he relates it to the Old Testament, and he talks about how when Moses ministered, Moses goes up on Mount Sinai, and he comes down, and the glory of God is so on him that it's shining that he has to put a veil over his face. It says that the people were afraid, and he ends up putting a veil over his face, and that ministry that Moses did from Mount Sinai and how he administered the law, that was glorious, but it was fading. And he talks about how that was a ministry of the Old Testament, a ministry of death. And then he talks about how what he's doing through the Holy Spirit is the ministry of life, and how much more glorious that is. And that we all get to go before God, and that we don't have to be afraid, that we can go before God with an unveiled face, and we don't have to veil our face when we come back, that we can minister the ministry of the Spirit of God, which brings not death, but it brings righteousness. That doesn't bring bondage, but it actually brings freedom. And this is the ministry that we get to do. And what I love is that's what we got to do. We got to bring this ministry of the Spirit. We got to bring the ministry of the power of God. I'm going to have the team come up because I want to give time for the testimonies. Can we give it up for the Thailand team? This isn't everybody. Awesome people. There was 11 of us that went. Erica Smith led the trip and did just a phenomenal job leading the trip. I think this is, if I can count right, about 6 of us. So we might even over the next little bit have a couple other people come and share some testimonies as well. There, I'm going to put that right there. Come on, y'all all come up to the front. Awesome people. Yeah, so we're going to share testimonies. My encouragement again is that these are all of our testimonies, that we get to take these as we're all a part of the body of Christ. We're all a part of the Oak City family. And I know that it was our church. Many of you sowed into this financially, and we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do it without that. And so really this is a celebration for all of us of what God has done. And so, yeah, who wants to go first?
Jared, take it. Come on. Thank you guys so thank you guys so much for sending us. It was just an amazing trip. First of all, happy 1-year anniversary to my wife, Allison. We stood right here 1 year ago today and got married, and then to be 1 year ago today, and to be on the same stage a year later, testifying what we saw in Thailand and doing ministry together in our first year of marriage was just fantastic. So, such a blessing to be with you. I want to echo what Jonathan said about just the hunger we saw in the Thailand church. This was a very well-planned trip. So from the second we get off the airplane, we are immediately, we are doing work. We're going to churches every day, some days multiple churches, and just to see the level of hunger. And in a nation where I think 2% are less are active Christians, to see how hungry these Christians are in Thailand was just such a blessing and just so cool to see. So I want to report to you guys, there is a hunger for the Lord over in Thailand. Jonathan talked about the supernatural darkness that's over this nation. One of the coolest things we witnessed over there was we met up with this man on one of the first days we were over in Thailand. This was a man with one of the most amazing testimonies I had ever heard. This was a man who, in the city we're in, the city of Phuket, this city is famous for every year they do this festival. This is a festival where thousands gather in the streets to honor deities, to honor demons. The prominent religion in this place isn't even Buddhism. It's like some hodgepodge Chinese folk religion where it's just everything's welcome. Demons, deities, they go after it. And in this festival, they meet up once a year. They go in the streets and they cut themselves and they self-mutilate and they pour blood. There's bloodshed in the streets to honor these demons. We met a man who was chosen by these demons, by these deities, to lead thousands in this festival. He was a high-ranking member of this religion who, in the past few years, put all of that behind him, and I think it was through Joel and through Glad World, came to know the Lord, and is now a Christian, and has put all of that behind him, and he owns this beautiful property up on this hill overlooking the city of Phuket. It's just beautiful. And after we met him at a church one day, he invited us and our team to go up to this property where for an hour we spent just praying over his property, where he has a desire to use it for ministry, to use it for worship, where we got to overlook the city of Phuket and pray over the city and just bless the city and just prophesy over this city. We got to prophesy over this man and his wife, and it was just so cool to see how hungry they are for the supernatural. Like, these people, they actually believe the Lord works supernaturally. They actually believe. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if the Western church actually believed in the supernatural, the level the Thailand church believes in the supernatural? So that was just incredible to see. We got to bless them. Other testimonies, there's so many. I'm going to pass the mic. But one church we got to visit, the night Pastor Jonathan infamously got to use two translators, two languages in one sermon. There were really three languages. We did prophetic words from the pulpit, and we got to lay hands on this one man, this big, jolly, had a big gut man, very happy. Had so many things wrong with him. We got to lay hands on, pray for him. We got to pray for he had trouble walking, right? He had an abrasion on his foot, had gut problems, and after we prayed for him, he was just so overcome of joy, where his gut problem was completely healed, had no more pain. I think he was more mobile, right? He could move, he was jumping around, and just an amazing testimony, and the Lord was just all over him. So that was so cool to see.
So before I share my testimonies from the trip, I wanted to share something that happened at our team dinner. We did a debrief a few days into the trip where we talked about some highs, some lows, and some struggles. And I told the team that a struggle that I was having was we were seeing all these powerful things happen. People were getting words of knowledge. People were getting healed. But I, with my own hands, did not see anyone get healed by me praying for them and laying my hands on them. And I was discouraged in that, of feeling like, is there something lacking in me? Is there something missing? Do I not have enough faith? What's going on here? In that transparency, like, the Lord came and met me. And so I end up praying for a lady at one of the churches. She has like this burning sensation in her eyes. She asked for me to pray for her. She said a short prayer, and then I heard the Holy Spirit tell me to ask her to blow on her eyes. And I was like, whoa, that's like a KMI. Like, you don't do that unless you're sure that that's the Lord. And so I took a risk, and I asked her, would you mind closing your eyes? And then I'm going to blow gently on your eyes. And she was like, okay, sure. So we did it. And then she was like, I want you to do it again. She's like, I'm feeling something. And so then I'm like, okay, great. So we do it again. And she was like, it's good. I'm better. And so that was my first healing. Come on. And then it was a day or two later, we are walking around these little shops, and I see a girl with a crutch and a brace on her ankle. And I just remember having this thought as soon as I saw her of like, I can't let her walk away without giving her what Jesus has to offer. And so I caught up to her and was just like, hey, can I pray for you? We had a couple of people with me. We laid hands on her. We did some encouraging as well, just loving on her, getting to get to know a little bit more about her and her situations. It was really sweet and special. And so after some ministry time, we asked her, like, hey, how does it feel? Does it feel any better, different? And she was like, I'm not sure. So she stood up, and she took about 10 or so steps, and she does them without the crutch, and she turns around and gets this amazed look in her eyes. She's like, I feel better, like it's gone. And so we get to see her walk the rest of the way, like through these streets, just holding up the crutch in her hand.
Thank you, Michaela, for being so vulnerable, because that gives me space to be vulnerable. So I had an amazing time. I mean, I felt so privileged to be a part of this team. Like, it was just so amazing to see the love of God flow through everyone, and just even the people on the ground, like, that was their thing. They said, if anything, you don't speak the language, but the language of love is universal. And so, like, that just stuck with me so much. And I was reflecting the other day. But towards the end of the trip, I was kind of feeling like this feeling of feeling left out and feeling a little jealous of some of my other teammates, and I was feeling really ugly for feeling that. And I was feeling like, God, I don't want to have this on me. Take it all away. And then we get to the last church and the service, and I remember, like, different people shared and preached, and I was like, man, I really want to do that, God, but I just want what you want. And I get this tap on my shoulder, and it's Matthew, the translator there. There was a Thai person, and he taps me and he says, hey, the kids, if you want to go serve in the kids ministry, you can, or you can stay back here. Either way, we're fine. I don't want you to feel obligated or anything. And so I was like, for a moment, I was like, oh, maybe I should just stay with the team, because the Sunday prior, I had the same experience. Actually, the Sunday prior, the Sunday school person didn't show up. So I got to go, and I had a girl interpret for me, and it was awesome and fun, and I was just so privileged. But I kind of had this ugly attitude on me, and I'm like, Lord, I'm just going to go because I know that's what you've gifted me in, and yeah, I'm going to go. And so there was 5 kids, and 2 of them were the missionaries there, Joel's children, and then Joel himself was there. And the young lady says to me, this is my first time to share the Bible story, but I'd really love for you to do it, and I can learn from you. And I was like, wow. I just felt so honored in that. And so I got to share with the kids, and they had some really good questions, and the Lord just was so sweet and so kind to allow just ideas to flow from me. And the kids, we did stretches and different movements and all these fun things that God gave me to do with them. And at the end, the team was getting prayed for by all the people in that church. And at the end, I'm like, man, I'm missing that part. And I'm feeling silly for even thinking that, but I still felt that. And at the end, I didn't know it at the time, but later I would find out. This woman come up to me and said, hey, I saw that you were in with the kids and you didn't get prayed over. I'd really like to pray over you if that's okay. And I was like, yeah, that'd be really awesome. And she's like, do you have a problem with sometimes feeling validated? And I was like, oh. I was like, yes, sometimes. And it was just she says to me, God's validated you. And the last couple of days as I've reflected on this, I just really feel like I was supposed to share this, even though I feel a little, I don't know, whatever. I just said, God was like, you're validated the moment I created you. You're validated the moment I made you. And I've given you different gifts than other people, and that's good. And so I was just really, really grateful for that opportunity. And then she just prayed over me, and God gave her prophetic word for me that was just dead on. And it was just really, really cool. And I feel like I don't want to take any more time, but I will just say there's a lot of other instances, and I can't wait to share with you guys when we can get a chance.
All right, I'm going to continue the theme of vulnerability from our team. So that same night that we were sharing struggles, I shared with the team that I had never spoken in a prayer language. I had never had the gift of tongues, and it's something I had been praying for a long time and asking God for. And as I was trying to pray for and minister to these other believers who couldn't understand English, I really felt the burden of just really desiring to have a prayer language to pray over them. And my team was really gracious to hear that and support me. And a few days later, we were in the van on our last day there, because that's where a lot of things happened. We spent a lot of time in the van. And Cole said, let's pray for Amanda, that she will receive a prayer language. And our team laid hands on me and prayed for me, and actually read a scripture or spoke a scripture over me that I had read that morning. And it is Romans 8:26. It says, likewise, the Spirit also helps in our weaknesses. For we do not know what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now, I am a pretty logical person. If I'm doing something, I like to know that I'm doing it the right way. And so I think I had been really nervous that if I spoke in a prayer language or tried to, that it would be me and not God, that I would somehow do it the wrong way. And as they were praying for me, I just felt release from that, that I didn't have to be afraid of messing it up, that it was okay to babble with God, to learn how to do this with him. And later that day at the last service that we had there in Thailand, God opened my mouth, and it was just a couple of words, but it was so sweet and just a really new level of intimacy with the Lord. So I just want to release that as an impartation over you guys, that if you are desiring a prayer language or another gift from God, that if there is anything that is a block in you that's preventing that from happening, that you will feel freedom from that, you will feel release from that, and that you will just have open hands to receive gifts from our good Father, gifts of intimacy with him, and not be afraid to maybe not do it perfectly to begin with. All right, I have one more thing I want to share. So a lot of you know, I have a heart for the world, for the nations. And as we were in Asia, I'm going to try again to open my Bible. God kept bringing me back to the same verse. It's in Revelations. And it is in Revelation 7:9. It says, "After these things I looked, and behold, a great multitude which no one could number, of all nations, tribes, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, 'Salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb.'" As we were there, worshiping with believers in their own tongues, over and over, God just spoke to me that we were getting a glimpse of heaven. And so I just want to release that over us today, that we would feel that unity in the body of Christ, that people from every nation have beautiful worship to bring before the Lord, that we have things to give, and we also have so much to receive from them. So I just pray that each of us would keep our eyes on the throne room, would look around and see other believers and say, yeah, we get to stand and worship God with you for eternity.